government of the Southern District of New York. I mean, he's going to have a team. I'm sure he has a team. Maybe he's just the face of it. But I'm looking at one lawyer. He goes on CNN, and he has what I say to be a well-informed conversation with a journalist, and we're going to speak about it. Let's take a look at that.
What prosecutors are arguing is not only does your client pose a flight risk, because obviously he's incredibly wealthy, has access to planes and a lot of staff, even though you said he turned over his passport to you months ago, they were also worried about him being able to interfere with witnesses and calling them. And so I guess the question is, how do you assure the court that that won't happen if prosecutors are saying this is someone who's attempted to bribe security staff and has already threatened and interfered with witnesses?
So I think that the most important thing, even more important than the passport, is that Mr. Combs came to New York on September 5th. As soon as we realized that this indictment was going to be coming down in a matter of weeks, maybe months, but sometime soon, Mr. Combs got on a plane, left his home in Florida, flew to New York. I called the prosecutors myself. I said, Mr. Combs is in New York. Do you want to know where he is? If you want to know where he is, I'll tell you where he is. But he wants to surrender. He's here to surrender. They didn't want him to surrender, because if he surrenders, they don't get to tell the judge that he's a flight risk and he's a danger. Because who, as a danger and a flight risk, would fly to New York and surrender? So they didn't want him to surrender.
So since September 5th, you had known, you expected it was likely he was going to formally face charges.
So I really knew he was formally going to face charges on March 25th, the day of the searches, when Homeland Security searched his Los Angeles home, his Miami home, and his airplane. I knew that day by looking at the search warrants. I mean, I've been doing this for a while. This is not my first or 100th rodeo, that this was going to come as a matter of time. What I realized in early September is that it was coming soon. And so it was time for Mr. Combs to come to New York, which he did. Let me just point out one very important thing. The prosecutors are seizing on something that happened 8 years ago. You know, this video that we've all seen, and it's a bad video for Mr. Combs, and he said so himself when he gave his apology. This is 8 years ago, and the prosecutors are talking about him bribing a hotel security worker. There was no criminal investigation. This was just a matter of personal embarrassment, because he and the person in the video were in the midst of a 10-year relationship, first or 100th rodeo. That this was going to come as a matter of time. What I realized in early September is that it was coming soon. And so it was time for Mr. Combs to come to New York, which he did.
I think he said something interesting there. He said they didn't want him to surrender. So then my mind started to wonder, why wouldn't they want Diddy to surrender? Usually a criminal, he's a billionaire, highly resourceful. He can make this hard for you guys. He's trying to cooperate, participate as it pertains to turning himself in. Try not to make this a spectacle. This tells me a couple of things, but we're going to sit here for a minute and deal with some of them. It's crazy because Diddy's wealth, which was once his greatest shield, is now becoming a target. So I agree with the lawyer. They didn't entertain that because they didn't want it to appear in court that he was cooperating and cooperative. But two, my mind wondered and said, yo, they want the assets. And so this goes back to my point in what Diddy may have lost a little faith in his legal team, is because I'm sure his legal team told him, listen, couple of different things. Number one, wherever they raided in this case, in the event you take a deal, they're going to want to seize those properties. That's one. So anywhere that they went in and found something, or they said you did freak offs on, they're going to try to seize that. So what did Diddy do? He started to sell it. So before you seize it, I'm going to sell it. Now, selling it makes the government say what? We need to hurry up. Because if these things are sold, we have no way to track that money down or see exactly where that money went to. And it's a different process to try to seize that money versus just taking over these properties and that jet. So if you noticed over the last couple of months, Diddy list that property on the West Coast that they rated. I think he listed it for upwards of $50 million. Quiet as kept, he had also listed his jet. Now, while doing so, his lawyer is in constant communication, one-way communication with the government. And he's kind of updating them on what's going on. Hey, Mr. Combs has received a letter of intent to buy his jet. We've had 3 buyers. They didn't pan out. You know, all of these different plans to get rid of the jet. And while he thinks that's building trust with the government, I believe, this is me, and I'm no legal expert or lawyer, but I believe that just made the government press the gas, knowing that if he gets rid of all the properties and take a deal, we have nothing to seize. If he gets rid of that jet and the properties, he's just sitting there with a guilty plea. He gets out, he's still almost a billionaire. And so if y'all out there and y'all doing anything outside of the confines of the law to try to survive or call yourself outside in the streets, you better ask your homeboy how he got a federal bond. We'll get to that later because we got Diddy in there. He's $1 billion guy and they won't budge. We got to figure out what the criteria is. Like, you got to ask your homeboy how he get that bond. But bonds are hard to get in the federal system because usually when they come and get you or they knock on your door, the wolves are at the gate and they're closing in. Let's look at it a little more.
It was time for Mr. Combs to come to New York, which he did. And let me just point out one very important thing. The prosecutors are seizing on something that happened 8 years ago. You know, this video that we've all seen, and it's a bad video for Mr. Combs, and he said so himself when he gave his apology. This is 8 years ago, and the prosecutors are talking about him bribing a hotel security worker. There was no criminal investigation. This was just a matter of personal embarrassment because he and the person in the video were in the midst of a 10-year relationship. That was difficult at times, that was toxic at times, but it was mutually so. And this whole notion that Mr. Combs is forcing drugs on someone is just nonsensical, and it's going to prove to not be true.
Well, in that video, he initially denied the allegations when his then girlfriend, who was in that video, filed a lawsuit last fall. And we have that video. I should note, CNN was the first outlet to exclusively report on it. He denied that happened when she filed it in a complaint. And then when the video came out is when he apologized for it.
So I wasn't his lawyer back then, so I don't think he denied. I mean, I think the lawyers were the ones mostly making the denials. I think they were denying sex crimes. I mean, because at the end of the day, the gravamen of that civil complaint wasn't a misdemeanor assault, which is what you see on that video. Not minimizing it, but it's a misdemeanor assault. What the gravamen of the complaint was sex crimes, and he denied that, and he still does.
Well, and you're saying that this is all just about that one relationship, but when you read through the indictment, they say that there's not just one victim. They say there's multiple victims here today, and what I heard described was they said they have 50 witnesses or victims.
Yeah, I think it's 49 witnesses and one victim. I think if you broke it down, and I say that because count 2, which is the sex trafficking count, has victim number 1, and there is no victim number 2 anywhere in the indictment.
So you're saying that there are not other women, because what they were essentially arguing here is that he coerced and forced women into sex acts by using physical force, financial pressure, emotional abuse, and narcotics for what they described as these freak-off sessions. They say that he self-described them as that.
Yeah, there's one victim in the indictment. The charging document.
One victim does count, right?
No, of course, but I'm just saying it's not 50. I mean, what they did is a little too cute. It's 50 witnesses or victims. Well, it's one victim. That's all that's in the indictment.
Our reporter who was in the courtroom today said that he appeared to have a stunned expression on his face. Was he surprised that he was arrested last night?
No, he definitely was not. I mean, I told him myself in early September, you are going to be arrested soon, and you're going to be charged with racketeering, and you're going to be charged with sex trafficking. So come to New York. It wasn't a long conversation. He agreed. So we knew this was coming. And in fact,